Hey there, Rub-a-Dub subs, it's Black Metal Werewolf making a brand new video for this week. And this week's video is going to be a new heavy metal conspiracy. If you don't know what heavy metal conspiracies are, it is a little series I'm starting on my channel where I shed light and the truth on conspiracies revolving around popular figures in rock and metal music. The last video I did is where I shed light on the fact that Alice Cooper was indeed possessed by a witch, the spirit of a witch, and how he is trying to combat it. And this conspiracy is about Elvis Presley. Now, everybody knows who Elvis Presley is. You say that name, everybody knows Elvis. Thank you very much. Regardless if someone is a fan of Elvis or not, everybody knows it. It's like Jesus or Tony Randall. You say it, everybody knows. Now, a long time ago, Elvis was a very controversial figure. He would get up on stage and he would shake his hips for all the girlies. And, you know, it would send the teenage girls into fits of passion and their parents into fits of rage. Their parents believed that he was going to corrupt their youth and a society of easy sex and easy drug use and all this. But as the years went on, Elvis didn't stay a very controversial figure. The people that hated him and were afraid of him grew old and were put into old folks' home or died. And the people that grew up listening to him became parents, and they didn't see him as a controversial figure anymore. They knew that, you know, I listened to Elvis as a kid, and I turned out perfectly fine. There's no harm in Elvis Presley or his music. So Elvis Presley went from a popular name because of controversy to a popular name of formality. Everyone knew who he was. There were impersonators who would go to birthday parties as Elvis, as entertainment. There were Elvis weddings. People were making fun of him in popular TV shows. Everybody knew who Elvis was. Everyone was making fun of him. He was no longer a controversial figure. He was still making music, just no one cared. I don't think it was like you were really like a die-hard fan of Elvis. No one really gave a shit because there were more bigger controversial names coming out like Jim Morrison, the Rolling Stones, Alice Cooper, Black Sabbath. These were becoming more controversial people. People thought, you know, Alice Cooper was hanging himself on stage or getting his head cut off, or the people from Black Sabbath, they thought they were Satanists, and same with the guys from Rolling Stones. All these horrible things. So a guy shaking his hips, you know, really not that controversial anymore compared to a guy hanging himself on stage. So as the years progressed, Elvis's name just went from controversy to, you know, regular everyday life. And Elvis didn't like that. He thrived on the controversy that he was getting. He loved that, you know, teenage girls were going wild for him and their parents hated him. And it got to the point, you know, he was with his wife and he had a daughter and life was just getting boring. So he turned to drugs and alcohol. And that's what killed him. He died in his home in 1977 in Tennessee, overdose, dropped dead on the bathroom floor. Or did he? I theorize that Elvis Presley hated his life so much and that he was becoming just the end of, like, the butt of a joke, just something that people could make fun of in TV and movies and stuff just to get a cheap laugh out of Elvis Presley. So he didn't want to be Elvis Presley anymore. So what he did was he found a Elvis impersonator. There were plenty of them at the time. Killed him and left him in his home. So people would find Elvis's body, probably drug the guy, so they would find drugs in the system and think that this person just died of an overdose. So therefore, you know, a lot of people thought that Elvis died. But even though he he faked his death, no one believed that he was dead. People are still seeing sightings of Elvis today. Some people believe that Elvis was abducted by aliens or that he's hanging out with Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster somewhere. However, I theorize that Elvis really thrived on controversy, and he wanted to get into the next most controversial thing. And what else was really controversial at the time? Punk, rock, and heavy metal music. It was getting more things. Like I said, Alice Cooper was doing things where he's hanging himself on stage, or people believing they were satanic, or punk bands with very strong political messages. So what Elvis did in 1977 was faked his death, then skipped state to New Jersey, and changed his name to Glenn Danzig, where he started a punk band called the Misfits. Now, clearly, Glenn Danzig doesn't look anything like Elvis Presley, but Elvis Presley had so much money that he could pay for any sort of plastic surgery and change his appearance to any way he wanted. He has that much money, he could buy the best doctors to give him the best surgeries money could buy at the time. And it worked pretty well. Glenn Danzig doesn't look much like Elvis, but he does sound a lot like Elvis. Even at the time, he couldn't change someone's vocal cords, aside from punching someone in the throat, and then their voice would be different for a week or two. So his voice stayed the same and he sang the same way. But he started a punk band, a horror-themed punk band, hoping that it would put the fear of God into people, you know? But, you know, as the 70s went on into the 80s, punk music didn't have as much impact because record companies wanted more punk bands, and they'd overinflated the market. It wasn't controversial anymore. True punk bands gave up because of the oversaturation of these shitty fake punk bands, and punk music just wasn't that big of a deal anymore. So Danzig then went to the next most controversial thing, which was goth music. Now, goth, during the 80s and 90s, goth music was relatively controversial. A lot of people thought people like Marilyn Manson were the next corrupting youth, that he was making teenagers kill themselves or committing sex, all these weird sex acts and getting high, and that's what was going to destroy America's youth. Danzig was there, but he never got as much controversial as, say, Marilyn Manson did or Nine Inch Nails. So he just kind of fell between the cracks again, and he didn't want that. He wanted to be a controversial figure, but it just never happened. And as the years went on, even more controversial things happened in music. For example, the black metal scene. People were burning down churches and committing murder. Elvis faked his death, but committing murder, if you want to become controversial with those things, you have to get caught. It's not a thing like where if you just fake your death and then skip town and start something new to become a whole new thing. If you want to commit the murder of somebody or burn down a church, you have to get caught, you have to get your name, you have to go to prison, you have to do all these things to be a controversial figure now. So, and I don't think Elvis was really prepared to do those kind of things. So he continued doing the whole Danzig thing, making albums hit or miss, mostly miss. And he eventually got tired, like, you know what, I'm not a controversial figure anymore. This isn't doing it anymore. So if you haven't been keeping up with the news, there is Danzig right now is making a Danzig Sings Elvis album where he is re-recording Elvis songs and singing it his way. So I think it's kind of become full circle, don't you think? Elvis was a controversial figure, became a household name, faked his death, tried to become a controversial figure again, didn't work, goes back to being Elvis. It all makes sense when you connect all the dots, doesn't it? That's my conspiracy theory for this week, guys. That Elvis intentionally faked his death to become Danzig, to become a controversial figure again. It didn't work, so now he's going back to try to live off his old fame of being Elvis Presley. That's my conspiracy theory. What do you guys think? Do you think that Elvis did that, or that he really died, or that he was abducted by aliens, or that he's hanging out with Bigfoot? Let me know. So that's it for today's video. If you like what you saw, don't forget to like and subscribe, and check out my past videos as well. Of course, don't forget to leave me a comment in the comment section letting me know what your opinions are on today's video. If you want to keep up with me on a more daily basis, you can follow me on Instagram, and I'll be putting that in the description section as I always do. Once again, guys, thank you very much for watching, and stay brutal.